Okay, in this section we're going to talk about muscle tissue, and then as we get later on we're going to talk about energy systems. I've redone these lectures and kind of dummied it down to the basic stuff that you need to know. We're going to dive a little bit into physiology just so you guys get a concept of the complexity that's going on, but really stay more conceptual. So we have three basic classes or different types of muscle tissue. When we think of muscle tissue, most of us probably think of skeletal, but we also have smooth and cardiac. We're really not going to spend any time on smooth. Smooth is the stuff that sits in our digestive organs and those areas. We have no control over it. It's very slow and there's really not much we can do. But we're really going to focus and hit hard on cardiac and skeletal. All right. So just show you some image of what it looks like under a microscope. The image A is traditional skeletal muscle tissue. It's multinucleated, striated. None of that you really need to know for right now. Then we have cardiac, and one thing I want you to know about cardiac is it's branched. And so if we look here, we have one cell and it's branching into two different cells, or branching out. That's a really important factor of cardiac tissue, and we'll talk about that later. And then image C is smooth muscle. So characteristics of skeletal, we ran through that real quick. It's multinucleated. None of this you need to know. All right. Another image under a microscope of what skeletal looks like. One thing that is kind of important to know is that it runs in parallel. Unlike a lot of other connective tissue, it's just kind of sitting there and it's in multiple different directions and planes. Skeletal muscle tissue runs parallel. And that's important to know from an injury standpoint of when we injure a muscle. It's important to rehab, stretch, and exercise it again so that we don't end up with a big scar tissue formation inside the muscle. Because it's supposed to be aligned and in this kind of nice formal pattern. So this slide is just showing how skeletal muscle, and talking about skeletal muscle, and it's voluntary. And what that means is that we have control over it. We can go out, we can do a workout, we can walk over, turn on a light switch, whatever it is. And for the most part, all of our skeletal muscle is voluntary, with the exception of things like respiration. Even though we have short-term control over it, once we reach a point where it's like, hey, we need oxygen, we need to get rid of carbon dioxide, the body kind of takes over and we go back to our primitive state and it says, hey, dummy, you got to breathe. So, but because it's voluntary, we can increase in size and things like that. And in the later lectures, we'll talk about hypertrophy and how the muscle gains in size and all the factors of that. So we won't get into that in this lecture. So I really wanted to talk about muscle contractions real quick. The isokinetic one here at the bottom, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about, but I do want to talk about isometric, isotonic. Isometric means there's no length change. This would be like if you're standing and trying to push against a wall. You can produce force, but the muscle is not moving or changing in length at all. And isometric is not a great exercise or a great type of contraction for gaining muscle size and mass, but it does have a couple of key points that we like to use it in. And the biggest one that I can think of is something related to an injury. So if you have, a broken arm or an injury that you're healing for a while, a couple of weeks, it's good to do isometric contractions. And here's a perfect example. Let's say we have someone with a fractured arm and they're in a cast. And it's like the 4-week mark where the bone's really starting to get strong, it's calcifying, but they can't totally come out of a cast yet because they need to be protected. So what we do is we have them do isometric contractions, just doing, squeezing their fist, contracting their bicep while they're in the cast, maybe using some putty and squeezing that putty or a grip strength, because we want them to keep their strength up, but we can't let them move it yet because the bone's not totally healed. So, things like sucking in your core and holding it, those are isometric types of contractions. Isotonic, which is the next one listed here, is the one we really want to do when we're performing like weights and lifting and things like that. And there's two different phases. There's a concentric phase, which is the shortening of the muscle, and an eccentric phase, which is the lengthening. And we'll get into those. And then isokinetic really is a fixed speed and velocity, and the only way you can do that is with a machine. So we're not going to talk about that a lot in this class. All right. So again, isotonic continued. It's a concentric and an eccentric contraction. Concentric is force that develops while the muscle is shortening, and eccentric is force generated while the muscle is being lengthened. All right. And if you had to take a guess between the two of them, which one do you think is more important? Hopefully you said eccentric, and that would be true. Eccentric is commonly referred to as working the negative when you're working out. And so let's take a classic bench press. All right, you're laying on your back. You got the barbell, in your hands, and you're down on your chest and you push the weight up off your chest. That pushing up off your chest is the concentric phase. When you bring the weight down and you're going kind of against that gravity, or I guess you'd be going with gravity, and you're letting it basically come down your chest, hopefully not so fast that it crushes your chest, obviously, that's the eccentric. And believe it or not, it takes a lot more energy, a lot more muscle fiber recruitment on the eccentric phase than the concentric. And if you've ever done plyometrics, like jumping and some of those things, the eccentric is typically what makes you sore the next day. All right. So muscle force generation, again, concentric, isometric, eccentric. It takes a lot more force production for the eccentric phase of an isotonic contraction than anything else. So that's the one we really want to focus on. So when you're doing a bench press, it's actually the slow down phase that you want to go slow, and then the thought is you want to do more of a ballistic up. But you really got to go slow on that eccentric lengthening, like a bicep curl. When you're letting the weight down, that's the important time, not necessarily when you're contracting it up. All right, how does it all relate to a workout? We're not going to get into this right now, but there are kind of 3 ways to build muscle tissue. There's more of an endurance, where lightweight, lot of rep. There's more of the bodybuilding, where we want to look shredded. And then there's more of the athletic power and speed and pure strength. And for this class, we're going to focus on that power and speed and pure strength, because that's the one that's important. So we'll get into later in section 3 and talk about all those different ways and the parameters that need to be set and all that kind of stuff. All right, now I want to get into cardiac tissue, and we're going to spend a good chunk of time here. Again, we'll hammer this a lot more when we get into section 3 of the cardiovascular system. But cardiac tissue is really similar to skeletal muscle, but it has 2 different distinctive characteristics. It has these interturculated discs, which really aren't that important for this class. It's a lot more in like anatomy and physiology and exercise phys. But it's also branched, and what that means is it forks, it can branch out. And that gives this ability to replicate cells in both a serial and a parallel pattern. And we'll talk a little bit about this later. Especially we'll talk about it hard when we get into the cardiovascular system. Okay, again, we're going to talk way more about cardiac tissue and the cardiovascular system in I think section 3. But for right now, I wanted to talk about just a quick couple of things that are really important to fitness and give them to you early. So we just talked about how cardiac cells are branched and they have these interturculated discs. So the discs aren't important, but this branching that we see right here, this is extremely important because it gives us the ability to regenerate tissue in 2 ways. It can stack and branch cells this way and build them in thickness, or it can stack cells end on end and build them in what we call a serial pattern where it's end on end. So we can build them in a parallel pattern where it makes it thicker. We can build it in a serial pattern. And the importance of that is what it's going to do to the chamber. And just give me let me give you a little kind of insight to this. When we train cardiovascularly and we go out and we run or we bike or we swim or whatever it's going to be, and we'll talk more about that later, but we need to do a few things. Okay, number 1, we need to make sure that we're doing that for a minimum of 20 minutes at our target heart rate, and we're going to get into that here in a minute. We need to make sure we're doing it at a frequency of at least 3 times a week, and when we do that, what we're actually doing is we're actually growing these cells in a serial pattern. We're stacking them end on end. And what that does is it actually enlarges the chamber of the heart so that when the heart contracts and it ejects blood, we call that stroke volume, when the stroke volume comes out, it's more than it would be for a regular person. So the heart is way more efficient. And so if you look at someone like a world-class runner, their heart rate might be like 35 to 40 beats per minute, extremely low. Well, the reason why that is because their heart chamber is so large and it's so strong, when it ejects blood out or when it pumps the blood out, it's pumping just as much as mine or your heart might be doing at a resting heart rate of 65 or 70. And so that's really important. The more cardiovascular fitness we do, the more efficient the heart gets and it becomes stronger and more efficient at pumping blood. The same thing will happen, not the same thing, but a similar thing will happen with like someone that never does anything but powerlifting, all right? They never do any cardio, they just lift all the time. they will gain muscle fibers in the heart as well, but the difference is they're going to gain in a parallel fashion. So they're going to stack them side by side instead of end on end like cardiovascular would. And even though they're gaining cells, what's happening is the heart wall is getting thicker, which in turn actually makes the chamber smaller. So even though they have a lot of cells and a lot of muscle fibers, their ejection rate actually goes down, and so their heart and their resting heart rate becomes higher. So they might go up to like 85 or 90. So it just kind of hits that importance of cardiovascular fitness. If you had to pick one thing, that would be way more important than muscle endurance by far. You know, now they're very close and they're both important in real life, but if you had to choose one, cardiovascular is definitely the more important one. All right, again, here's what it looks like under a microscope, but you can see some of that branching in there. For example, right here you can see this branching going on. All right, so let's talk about why the heart is so important, our average heart rate, and some different heart rates. All right, so if we have a person, all right, that has a resting heart rate, which is this RHR, that resting heart rate of 70 BPM, which is beats per minute, all right, on an average day they will be over 100,000 times. All right, let's say we start working that person out, all right, and we lower their resting heart rate by 5. So they go from 70 beats per minute down to 65. That saves over 7,000 beats a day. So the heart has to beat 7,000 times less, and it equates to over 2.5 million in a year. All right, and it is very easy to lower your resting heart rate from 70 beats a minute down to 65. You can do it in about 3 to 4 weeks if you train, 2 or 3 times a week for 30 minutes. It's very easy to get your resting heart rate down to that. All right, and again, we just talked about heart tissue regeneration. It can grow both in that parallel or that serial type pattern. All right. So what is our maximum heart rate? Some of you have been exposed to this already because you had to do your fitness performance test. Some of you may not have. But our maximum heart rate, our target heart rate, and our resting heart rate are things we're going to talk about next. All right. So our maximum heart rate is based on 220 beats per minute minus our age. When we are born at birth, our maximum heart rate is 220 beats per minute on average. And then for every year of life, we lose a beat. So if you're 20 years old, your maximum heart rate is 200. All right. But what is a target heart rate? Oops, excuse me there. Target heart rate is something that we want to try to shoot for when we're out exercising. Let me just pause this and move this little slide around because that way you can see it better. All right, apologize for that. Let's go through this again. Okay, so again, maximum heart rate, that 220 minus age. Target heart rate is what we're looking to shoot for when we're exercising, all right? And there's a formula out there called the Carvonen formula. Again, some of you may have used this, some of you may not. And the way we work it is we take our maximum heart rate, which is 220 minus our age, and we're going to subtract our personal resting heart rate, all right? And the best time to get your resting heart rate is first thing when you wake up in the morning, all right? And we're going to times that by 80% in this case, all right? So we're right here on the bottom, you can see an example. We have a 25-year-old person with a resting heart rate of 65, all right? And so what we're going to do is we do 220 minus 25 equals 195. We're going to take their resting heart rate, which is 65, out, and that gives us 130. And then we're going to times that by 80%, which is our workload, all right? And when we get into energy systems, we'll talk about why that's so important. And then we get that number and we add our resting heart rate back into it. So this person, if they want to work out at 80% of their kind of maximum heart rate, their workload, I guess you would say, they need to be hitting 169 beats per minute. This is a little bit different than if you just do your age times the 80%. It makes it more personal because it's taking in your resting heart rate. All right. So what I tell people is, if we back up here, I tell people they need to be between 65 and 80%. And let me just get into energy systems here a little bit. Anything below 65%, so if we're plugging in 65% right here into the equation, anything below that, and you are not stressing the heart enough to gain changes in a serial manner, we're not going to be able to stack cells end on end. All right, so we need to be at least at 65%. We need to be at least working out for a minimum of 20 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. All right, and then our heart rate needs to be in that fashion. So let me just do this at 65% really quick. So 220 minus 25 minus 65 times 0.65 equals, and then we add the 65 back into it. even though it's not shown here, it'd be like 149. All right. So if we did this at 65%, it would be 149, and at 80%, it's 169. So again, anything below 65%, we're not stressing the heart enough. Anything above 80%, and what's going to happen is we move in to basically what we call glycolysis. It's another form of energy system that we'll talk about in a few slides here. And the problem with that is its byproduct is lactic acid. And lactic acid will start to burn, and we won't be able to keep that pace that we need to for the duration, for that 20 minutes. So when we start creeping above 80-85% of our target heart rate area, that workload area, we're exercising so fast that we're depleting the amount of energy in the cells, and we have to go into a different energy system, and it really becomes painful, and usually we have to stop. So 80% is usually that kind of upper limit that you want to work out at. So anyways, so what we would do for this person, we'd say, hey, you need to go out and exercise minimum of 3 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes between 149 beats per minute and 169 beats per minute. And the great thing about that is it doesn't matter what you're doing. You can be running, biking, swimming, jogging. You're always going to get cardiovascular fitness. All right, here's the downfall to this. All right, when we go out and we work out cardiovascularly, all right, and we've been working out, let's say 6 months, we're doing great, we're working out for 6 months, we're in great shape, and then life happens, we have a baby, whatever it might be, you know, family, get married, all those things in life that happen, and we say, okay, I'm taking a break, I stop. Within about 48 to 72, and some of the research I've even read, it says it's more like 36 hours, we will start to fall off the chart, and our heart is going to start to get lazy and already fall down. And so basically, we got to continue that. Now, if you've done it for 6 months, you're not just going to reverse that overnight, but within 48 to 72 hours, you're going to start to fall off the chart and start to fall back to the very basic level that we need. And then smooth muscle, we're really not going to go into. It's just slow, and it's doing all our digestion and stuff like that. All right, energy systems. All right, nutrients from foods. We're going to get way into nutrition in like the 4th section or something like that, so I'm not going to hammer it too much here. All right, but basically, the bottom line is we get ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. That is the energy level, or the energy molecule that we use at the cellular level, from these 3 categories: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. The number 1 that our body likes to use is carbohydrates. It's really easy. Then the second one is fats, and then the last one is proteins. All right. So again, energy, aka ATP, this is what it looks like as a molecule. I'm not going to test you on this on the exam or anything, but just kind of keep that in mind. All right. We're going to really fly through this. This really isn't that important, what a kilocalorie. We'll get all into this in nutrition, so I'm going to fly through it right now. Again, at rest or anytime, really, the body uses carbohydrates the best, and then fat, and then protein. Here's what a monosaccharide. We're going to go through all this when we get into nutrition for sure, so I'm going to kind of fly through it right now. One thing I do want you to know, protein, the body has a really hard time using as an energy source, and that is why it just, with those diets and things like the high protein diets works well, because we can't use it as energy very well. It's got to go through glucogenesis, and it's a pain in the butt. So we'll talk about this again when we get into nutrition. All right, let's talk about energy sources though. All right, ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is produced 3 different ways within the cell. All right, anaerobically, it's produced 2 different ways, and anaerobic means without oxygen. We have creatine phosphate and we have glycolysis, and then we have aerobic metabolism, which uses oxygen. All right. The anaerobic ones, the creatine phosphate and glycolysis, are extremely fast and they produce a lot of energy quick. But aerobic metabolism is a little slower, and so that's why we kind of, it's more for jogging and endurance type of things. It's not for sprinting. All right. So this first guy, I'm gonna have a drink here real quick. This first guy that we see over here on the left is creatine phosphate. And a lot of you have taken creatine supplements in your lifetime. Maybe you still are. Unless you're doing very ballistic, short duration type of exercise, you're wasting your money. You really are. Because here's what's happening. What we have is we have a phosphate molecule attached to a creatine molecule inside of the cell at the membrane level, or at the cytoplasm level, inside the cell itself. It splits off the phosphate, gets 1 molecule of energy. It's a 1-to-1 relationship, and it's gone within, here it says 15 seconds, but it's really gone much sooner than that, about 5 to 8 seconds. All right, there are not too many things in life that only last about 5 to 8 seconds. Maybe a fight, maybe a big time one time thing like in athletics like shot put, javelin, triple jump. But in firefighting, most of that stuff is gone by the time you're even putting on your turnouts. All right, you burnt through that, and we've already gone into a different pathway. All right, so if you're performing exercise, especially at a high rate of intensity, creatine phosphate is gone within about 15 seconds at the very, very maximum. All right, then we move into this next system called anaerobic, called glycolysis. And what glycolysis is it takes a glucose molecule, which is the simplest form of sugar, which we find in like a carbohydrate, and it splits it in half, and we get a 1-to-2 relationship. All right, so for every glucose molecule, we get 2 energy, 2 ATPs in the net process down the road. All right, it's very easy. There's glucose all over in our body, in the blood. It's very readily available, and the body can use it. The problem with this guy is its byproduct is lactic acid. And so as we split all these glucoses, and we split them, and we split them, and we split them, when we break off different things, it accumulates as lactic acid. And we've probably all felt this. We've probably all been doing a big sprint, a big high-intensity workout, and you get that kind of burning acid filling in your legs and maybe your butt and your glutes or wherever you're working out. And really, that is the limiting factor of exercise. That lactic acid threshold, the body's ability to deal with that lactic acid, is kind of what limits exercise. And so it's fast, it's quick, but we can only perform that for so long before we build up acid to a level that the body can't deal with it anymore. And typically at maximum exertion, that usually lasts about 60 seconds to maybe a minute and a half. All right. After that, we have to go into aerobic, which is using oxygen and carbon dioxide, and we move on from there. All right. So again, we have the ATP PRC, which is the phosphocreatine or creatine phosphate system. It's pronounced either way. Very short. It's a 1-to-1, and we run out of it extremely quick. Glycolysis, again, it's a 2-to-1 relationship. It's for high energy, high kind of output, but it's short duration. Again, it lasts about 60 to 90 seconds, somewhere in that range. And its byproduct is lactic acid, which we don't deal with very well. Now, we can flush lactic acid very fast, and one of the old wives' tales is that lactic acid causes soreness, and that's absolutely false. If you exercise at maximum exertion for 60 to 90 seconds, and you build up your lactic acid levels to the maximum, and then you shut down, even if you really aren't moving around, within about 30 to 60 minutes, all those levels are back down to normal and gone, or at least to a level that the body can deal with them no problem. All right, so that wouldn't cause soreness 2 and 3 days later. And we've really proven that to be the fact. And what soreness is caused by is localized inflammation due to micro tears in the fibers and things like that. So anyway, so just kind of know that lactic acid isn't causing that. But it is what is causing the burning sensation that we get in our muscles that kind of says, hey, I got to stop. Let me get this phone real quick. All right, sorry about that. So let's move on here. Let's see. Again, it's 1-to-2. We talked about all this already. Lactic acid at peak levels of exertion. They can only produce about 1/3 of the ATP, and as a result, we start to go into glycolysis, which we just talked about, and it's painful. All right, and again, that's the limiting factor of exercise in most cases. That ability to flush out the acid and buffer it down and get rid of it. It just stacks up so fast that we kind of say, all right, enough's enough, and we have to stop. And what's important to this in the firefighting side is, next time you're at a stadium or something, see how many stairs you can run at maximal exertion and how many flights of a floor you can get. If you're in a major burning building and you got to do a quick evacuation with a patient or something, you got maybe 60 to 90 seconds of maximum exertion before you hit a wall. And I mean, you're going to hit a wall hard. And so one of the things that we have you do, one of the workouts is an 800-meter dash. And then the other workout I think I have you doing is, I think, hills or stadiums. That's to hit this system home and see when you guys hit that wall, because you need to know what it feels like. When you're in turnouts and full gear, it can be a huge event, and now you just hit a wall and you can only go at 60 to 70% now, and that can be an issue. All right, and then we have aerobic metabolism. The cool thing about this guy is it gives us a lot of energy, but it's slow. Again, when we get above about that 80% of our maximum heart rate, we start to get away from this system and get into that glycolysis. We start to build up acid. So as long as we're below that 80%, we're using aerobic. The cool thing about it is it uses oxygen, and its byproduct is carbon dioxide. So when we start to use this system, if it ramps up, we just start breathing a little bit harder, and we breathe off the carbon dioxide, and it's no big deal. So these are just some charts showing that stuff. Let's see. Oh, these are some exercise science charts. You guys can forget these ones. So, all right. I hope you guys enjoyed this lecture and got some information out of it, and we'll see you at the next time.